I'm not sick or struck dumb. Or don't you know a kick when you see one can't quit? We're not done. We're gonna kick till the next one.
Hello, fine people, and welcome to The Kick. This is a theme, scheme, and guitar pick and movie podcast on the Now Playing Network. I am your host, Chance Solom Pfeiffer. Today, it is the reason for the season episode. Our Vampires of America kick has all been building toward Sinners, though I do want to say we have a wonderful epilogue coming next week. It's The Lost Boys with Noah. But no, we picked a good one here, folks, to base the series on. Our capstone is the latest film from Ryan Coogler, the director of Creed and Black Panther, and someone perpetually cited as firmly within the vanguard of that next generation of filmmakers who's still managing to make cool shit in a dire Hollywood system. And with Sinners, we get to see what interests Coogler outside of franchise movies. And it turns out it's a lot. Shooting in IMAX, Tommy guns, 1930s Mississippi, casting his acting muse Michael B. Jordan in 2 roles, and using a vampire story to explore how the blues and other musical traditions of oppressed peoples are both, let's say, ecstatic community builders and creepy honeypots for interlopers. Here to discuss Sinners on Easter weekend, he is the founder and editor of Fools Who Dream, and he once tried to win a battle of the blues by writing an essay about blue is the warmest color. Ben Campbell Ferguson, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Chance. Wow, I was not expecting blue as the warmest color to come up in this one.
I was just sort of like, blue, what can I do with Ben? I think I have heard him talk many times about Leah Seydoux in Blue is the Warmest Color, so that's what I went with. How are you, man?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm very excited to talk about Sinners. There's a lot to talk about.
There is so much to talk about. I think you really like it or not like it. I think this is a good one for podcasting because it's like a genre movie that is clearly about so many other things besides getting bit in the neck, as many of the vampire movies in this series have been. But let me just start there, man. What did you think you were getting into with Sinners, and what were you actually getting into? Did anything surprise you? Did it meet expectations or defy them?
Let me in, man. Some weird shit going on out here.
You keep dancing with the devil. One day he's gonna follow you home.
I think everything about it surprised me because I had gone into it with the assumption of, oh, this is going to be Michael B. Jordan, or 2 Michael B. Jordans, rather, versus KKK vampires. And it's really not that. I mean, I would even argue that it's not ultimately a horror movie because the actual horror elements kind of feel like an afterthought to a degree. I think it's a movie about how both vampirism and music offer a kind of immortality. I think it's a movie about the difference between evils that you know or think you know versus evils that are more insidious and harder to define. And I think it's a movie that's really about Ryan Coogler's ongoing quest to make genre films that play into the tropes that people expect from those genres, but also bring in the humanity and the spontaneity from his great directorial debut, Fruitvale Station.
That's right. Where do you fall in his work generally? Fruitvale, Creed, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever.
I love Ryan Coogler, and I remember seeing Fruitvale Station back in 2013 and just being so overwhelmed by it because Ryan Coogler, here's a director who makes movies about life-shattering events, but his interest is always, well, what happened before that event? What happened after it? You know, Fruitvale is all leading up to the murder of Oscar Grant, and yet his interest is the little moments. Oscar playing with his daughter, or going into the grocery store and running into somebody. And I think that the extraordinary thing about him as a director is that he's managed to bring that spirit into these genre films. In Creed, yes, it's a great underdog boxing movie and it's satisfying on that level. It hits all those notes you want a movie like that to hit. But at the same time, he's saying, well, what about Adonis Creed's girlfriend?
Yeah,
What's going on with her? Oh, she has progressive hearing loss. Let's have a scene about that. And it's one of the best scenes in the movie. Oh, what's going on with Rocky? He's not just training his mentor's son. He's going through chemotherapy. And I think uh, showing like Rocky's medical struggles and juxtaposing that in a montage with like the classic, boxing training rituals, that's the spirit of Ryan Coogler right there, the big moments versus the kind of unseen heroics. And I think that spirit is very much alive in Sinners.
totally. He not only manages like not to lose the little human moments, but he also just kind of like blows them up and amplifies them in a way that I sometimes they can outsize in your memory the like what is the takeaway from the movie. Like Black Panther is like that for me. Like I think the action and the set pieces in Black Panther are fun, but it is the ancestral plane scenes that I remember. Um, and this movie might have a little bit of that too. So I'm gonna wing it on the synopsis and you help me here. If it feels like I'm going too far afield. The actual setup, I would argue, is kind of elegantly backed into. Like there's these two twin brothers, Smoke and Stack, both played by Michael B. Jordan, who are back in 1930s Mississippi, Jim Crow South. They're back from Chicago, and they're kind of like going around. They've just bought this sawmill. They're setting up this juke joint. They're going to have this big party tonight. And the first act of the movie has this great, like, we're throwing a big event energy as they kind of like they split up and they go all around their old hometown, kind of gathering up catfish and drinks and musicians to have this event. And then you kind of realize like, okay, this juke joint is we'll get into real spoilers later, but I think I can say this. It's basically a money laundering operation because they've come back to Mississippi with a large chunk of cash that they need to make seem legit. So one of the first people that they pick up is their young cousin Sammy, who's also called Preacher Boy, played by Miles Caton. And it turns out he is a hell of a guitar player and can really sing, and he's going to become the night's entertainment. And they get Delroy Lindo, a local harmonica playing stalwart, to accompany him. And other people come into the mix too. There's Mary, played by Haley Steinfeld, who's a former flame of Stax. I'm definitely going to confuse Smoke and Stack, but she's a former flame of Stax, and she's in town because her mom's just died. You got Jamie Lawson as Perline, who is maybe going to be a love interest of Preacher Boy. You have Lee Jun Lee and Yao are the local Chinese storekeepers who are helping throw the event. After everything is kind of like reached nearly a fever pitch, that's when the vampires show up, led by Jack O'Connell as Remick, and he bites a few people to kind of swell his ranks. And I would say that is more or less the setup. What am I missing, Ben?
I think that about covers it, but I have to say, I think it really tells people a lot about this film that it took you so long to get to the vampires.
Yes.
Because there is a sense that the setup kind of is the movie, and the setup is maybe the reason that Ryan Coogler made the movie. And I'm not going to say the vampires aren't important, because I'm sure we'll talk about the metaphor for
Yes.
vampirism and how that speaks to what all of the film is about. But honestly, the sort of heist movie energy of like, we're getting a team together to open this juke joint. Who's going to cook the food? Who's gonna, guard the door and be the host? Who's gonna paint the sign that tells people what this place
That's
is?
right.
It's really a movie about bringing a team together, getting the band together, and that's to me all the most fun stuff.
you're totally right. And here's the line in the sand for me. When I was thinking about, do there need to be vampires in this movie? And I was tipping toward like, can I say that? Can that be a legitimate point? And what it basically boils down to for me is the vampires are there because they justify their existence in the movie because they also play music. If they didn't play music, I would say it's a tacked on afterthought, like why we don't even need it. But the fact that they engage in the art forms that this movie is chiefly curious about is what makes it hold together for me.
Yeah.
I guess I want to say real quick in the context of this series, because I want to tip my hat a little bit. I've done a couple Black vampire movies in this series, Blackula with Odie Henderson and Ganja and Hess with Leah Anderson. And I think that the thing that is different about those movies from, say, The Lost Boys and Fright Night and Near Dark to an extent is in the Black vampire movies, vampirism has a lot to do with like, how should we exist? And the Black characters asking themselves like, how can I do what I want when so much has been taken? How can I live my life when there is like this curse, this vampiric curse, like running through the country that I find myself in? Versus I think in the other movies that I mentioned, many of which I liked, it's a simpler kind of storytelling of like, I am innocent and that is evil. And I think Sinners falls more on the Ganja and Hess side of things in terms of complicating that a lot. Like, what do vampires mean? Are they bad? Are they the sinners? Is everyone in this movie the sinner? So Ben, let me kick it to you. What role do you think vampirism plays in this movie besides people in red contacts chowing down?
Those contacts are really scary, I think.
It is a great, I have to say, I think that glowing eyes, kind of a played out move. And the fact that these contacts are like kind of metallic, I was like, I don't think I've ever seen this specific costume design before.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that to me everything comes back to the line where the one of the brothers is talking about, oh, we were in Chicago, but we've come home because we would rather deal with the devil we know.
Yeah.
And the devil they know is the KKK guy who sells them the property at the beginning. And they have this sense of like, yes, men like that are evil, but we understand how to deal with them. There's no secret about, how bad they are, so we know how to protect ourselves. And the vampires are different. I think the vampires are a more insidious kind of evil because the really scary thing about these vampires is that they're very cheerful,
Yes.
And Jack O'Connell, his attitude is like, what? Being a vampire is great. I'm just liberating you.
Yeah.
I'm not like those other white people. And
Right.
it kind of reminds me of the villains in Get Out a little
100%.
bit. There's that, I would have voted for Obama for a third term if I could have energy. And that is, I think, really, really frightening. And the idea that in some ways the devil you don't know is the more frightening devil. But also, Smoke has a great line where he says, I've been around the world. I haven't seen demons. I haven't seen ghosts. I've only seen power, and money is power, or words to that effect.
Yeah.
Of course, what he learns by the end is that the vampires represent a power greater than money. They represent this kind of primal, natural force that transcends any of that. It's like climate change or the White Walkers in Game of Thrones. It's an existential threat that's a threat to everybody, by the way, regardless of the color of their skin.
I totally agree with you that that's one of the things that this movie crushes, is like the white people protesting too much thing of like every time they are they're like, why do you want to come into a juke joint of exclusively black denizens of Mississippi on this night? And they're just like, I just think that we're all the same, man, and like you should let us in there.
Even it makes it more scary that the vampires are actually kind of seductive. Like when they start playing music, I think there's a line where someone says, "Oh, they're actually pretty good."
Yes, no doubt. And I want to talk. We'll get into the music, I think, more specifically as we go, and sort of like what style and what traditions people are playing in. But before we get too heady, let's answer one of the main questions I think someone would have about this movie is, how are the double Michael B. Jordans for you?
Love it. Love double
Okay.
Michael B.
Nice.
I think this movie really speaks to why he's not only one of the great actors of his generation, he's one of the only true stars of his generation. Because I think that there are a lot of actors, even some very talented actors, who would use a role like this to kind of make it a show all about performing what a great actor they are, and come up with like all these sort of very obvious physical tics to differentiate the twins. And with him, it's just such a subtle shift in demeanor. Smoke is a little more interior, he's a little more serious. Stack is a little more wily. He smiles a bit more, and I love that. I love that he's not like, oh, I'm taking this juicy double role to
Right.
win an Oscar. I mean, I would nominate for him for an Oscar personally, but it's not a performance where it feels like the movie is serving the actor. It feels like the actor is serving the movie, and I love that.
Yeah, one of them's got a limp and wears a top hat, and the other one, no. Well, I'm totally with you. And one of the great things about that in terms of serving the movie is, I think you actually learn about the differences between them, not just by being like, how do they talk, what do they look like, but what are the choices they make in the story.
Yeah.
And you start to see mounting choices where Smoke is sort of like, we need to stick to the plan here. Like, we cannot be accepting script from the general store, and we cannot be letting just anyone into this party. Like, we are trying to launder money here. And Stack is more just sort of like, I don't know, like, come on, like, everybody's here, we're back in town. And I think those choices end up, spelling where they ultimately go. I think, what do you think that Michael B. Jordan is best at? Do you have a favorite like move of his, or a favorite mode of MBJ at this point in his career?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. To me, he's actually the perfect actor for Ryan Coogler, because he has a gift for playing these larger than life, almost mythic characters, but
Yeah.
there's always a looseness to his performance, and it doesn't feel like he's reading a bunch of lines. It just feels like he's almost like kind of casually sauntering through the movie in a way that I find just so transfixing. Like I just watched Black Panther again the other night, and the first scene where he's in the museum and he's going to
Incredible.
take the artifact, and he says to the woman, "I'm going to take it off your hands," and he just says that so casually, and he's all the more frightening and charming because of that. It just feels like he's recognizable, but also he just seems to vanish into these characters and transform so effortlessly, and that's what makes him mesmerizing, I think.
He's so good in that Killmonger way of, let's say, Stack's evolution toward the end of this movie, where he gets to play that more heightened, a little bit cartoonish, but in a fun way. And really the only time I don't like Michael B. Jordan is when I feel like he's biting down too hard. Something like Without Remorse, I have no patience for. But when he's just kind of like existing, being like, I'm making a movie with one of my best friends and I'm in it twice, pretty good. This is a beautifully shot, multi-layered movie that in certain ways is like transcending time and space. I think the only parts of it that I did not actually buy were the moments of pure horror, where it's just like, okay, now a vampire is gonna grab a person, and I am not sure that is where Ryan Coogler's strengths as a director lie. What did you think of what Coogler brought to the table when it came to like the pure horror scenes?
I mean, on the one hand, I'm a scaredy cat, so the fact that the movie's not super scary works in my favor.
Sure. Yep. I hear you.
But at the same time, I absolutely see what you're saying because when I think about like how Coogler handles action, I think about how great the boxing scenes in Creed are. I think he's great. He is so fantastic. He's great with these kind of one-on-one scenes of action. I think when you get into more like large-scale battles, that's where it feels like maybe he's not quite as comfortable. And I felt that, especially with the big showdown near the end of the film, it kind of goes by in a blur. And I actually felt like the movie kind of kept us at a distance from it. Like it almost didn't even feel like the movie's heart was in that stuff. It felt a little bit obligatory.
Yeah, I'm with you, because he's just so good at doing things the way that he wants to do them, and so it sort of stands. It almost like is glaring when he makes a choice that is not inspired.
Yeah.
And so like there's a scene, for instance, where Omar Benson Miller, who every time I'm like, that's Forrest Whitaker's kid, right? And it's not. He's not related to Forrest Whitaker at all. But he plays Cornbread, the doorman. And there's a scene where he kind of, this movie uses to nice effect having to invite the vampires into the juke joint or else they can't get back in. And it's Stack who like extends an arm to pay him the money, and the sound effect that is used when Cornbread grabs the arm is just like a jung, and then it's like the sound design is just kind of, I don't know, if you asked AI to make a horror trailer, it's just like little it's just a kind of this moment where it's like, oh wow, it's so weird he didn't have his own idea for how to do this and was just sort of like, well, just get it done. Because I think that for me, like, great horror directing is also just about like blocking and space and how creepy it is when people move through space. And there are kind of telling moments where the vampires are about to move or perhaps leave the ground and it cuts away instead, which I think feels like a smart move, but is also sort of like, I don't know. If it was gonna look cool, I would have liked to see how it was gonna look.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're hiding some of the actual vampire fighting.
Well, and like as far as great horror, I feel like you need suspense as much as scares. And I don't know if this film was like as suspenseful as it could be, because I think that there is a sense of like the drama at the beginning and the conversations as they gather everyone together to make the juke joint happen.
Yeah.
All of that is so good,
Right.
and so rich, and you're so caught up in these negotiations and the off-color wit that is part of the movie's strength that
Right.
like by the time the vampire stuff starts, which is relatively late in the movie, there's kind of this feeling of like, oh, this is coming into the picture like after basically a bunch of just normal conversational scenes. Like, would this movie be better if it was just about two brothers starting a business?
Yeah. Yeah. It's more in the kind of horror it is good at is maybe more like Midsommar or let's say Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, not the first one, where it's like, okay, I'm already in the weird horror trance with these people, and instead it's going to be the kind of creepy like, so what are they going to get up to? Are they going to make everybody dance a jig? which is different than sort of like vampires are gonna get you. So I
Yeah.
appreciated that he was good at, again, those moments of like observing people, or like, wouldn't it be weird but on theme if the vampires did this? But yeah, the moments of like, we're gonna bite you, didn't do it for me very much.
Well, and it's I think a testament to that the vampire moments that do work are the kind of weird moments. Like all of a sudden we have a scene of this huge army of vampires and they're all singing like while they're waiting for someone to invite them in. And it's like, oh God, I'm getting caught up in this vampire musical number.
Yeah,
That's not what I expected.
Rocky Road to Dublin, and it was playing at a cafe where I got brunch the next morning, and I was like, "How where have I heard this song?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, a bunch of saw 60 vampires doing Lord of the Dance to it." Um,
We got to get like the vampire choral tour going on as a way to
Absolutely.
promote this movie.
so let's get into the music, man, because I feel like music, comma man, not music man, because
76 trombones.
I'm on record as saying that's too many. I've always said this.
Really, the showpiece of this movie is the scene at the beginning where Miles Caton is playing music, and you have basically almost like a rift in the space-time continuum
Yes,
open, and you're seeing musicians from the past and the future in the crowd making music along with them. And there's something really lovely in the film about how, oh, music connects you to everyone who has played music before you and everyone who will play music after you. And that's kind of the positive immortality in contrast to what the vampires have. And that plays into the epilogue, which I know you want to talk about
for
later,
sure.
but the ending scenes even like hit home more how that whole idea is kind of like the key to the movie's heart.
Yeah, the scene you're talking about is Preacher Boy Sammy gets just, yeah, so into this guitar solo, and the throngs of people are so into it that yeah, appearing beside him is like this guy who looks like Bootsy Collins or a Parliament funk guitarist, and then like various like West African dancers, and there's even Zishu opera performers that show up, and yeah, they're all just kind of swirling around each other, and all of a sudden like the strings start to do what the guitar was doing. And this lines up with the framing device at the beginning, which talks about or heavily suggests that Sammy is a griot, or an artist in the West African poet tradition who is capable of bringing many people together. But it's such a strong power that it also draws evil toward it, and that's kind of what you have of like the vampires sauntering up. But initially three. Well, initially one, and I guess we can go back and talk about that too. Of like, these are vampires who are looking to start a cult, and Remick, the Jack O'Connell guy, is fleeing the local Choctaw, who then come and warn this like isolated white couple who are very, I think, conspicuously are without community. They are much more the kind of like homesteaders who are like, we each have one rifle and we don't want anyone on our land and we don't want anyone to come to the door, which is like quite a contrast to the wonderful madhouse that's happening over at the sawmill. And their like ranks start to swell. But yeah, what do you think about, what's this movie trying to say about music as a path to togetherness or to salvation or just another version of sinning? It's got a real, I'm all over the place here, Ben, but it also has this clear like a kind of a battle line is drawn with like religion, and specifically like the black church where Preacher Boy's dad preaches. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to look at it, because you were talking earlier about, who is a sinner in this movie? Is that a word that applies to everyone on some level. And I thought there was something interesting about the church scenes at the beginning and the end of the film, and how they compare to kind of the congregation of vampires. And there's a sort of visual similarity there. Preacher Boy's running from the vampires, running into his father's church, where his dad is saying, put down the guitar, your music is sinful. And in a way, he's like caught between these two worlds. Both of those worlds basically want to uh, suck the talent and the joy out of him, or to possess it
Yeah.
on some level. And the only path for him is to break free of both. He can't be in his father's world, but he also can't sell his soul to the vampires, because for him, at least as an individual, both of those outcomes are a kind of hell. So there's an interesting like symmetry of like the different realms he's caught in between.
Yeah. And I guess just how nothing is clean for anyone. There's
Yeah.
I don't think there is any like right path here. And the path he ends up taking is one, I guess, defined by individuality and a kind of calling. But when you see him at the end, he does end up, just the way that character is framed at the end, he does seem alone. He does seem alone with his choices when he's visited in the epilogue.
Yes.
Ben, was there a performance in the ensemble you like best? We talk about Michael B., but there are a lot of people in this movie.
I think that Michael B. Jordan and Jack O'Connell, I think, are the most uh, exciting performers in this ensemble. But I want to talk a little bit about Unmi Musaku, who plays
Yeah.
Annie, who is Smoke's old love. And I don't think I'd seen her in a film before, and she just had this really powerful presence. Like there's a sense of gravity. Smoke is drawn to her, we're drawn to her. She doesn't say a lot, but whenever she's in the room, you feel this this great strength and this great depth of feeling. And I think one of the most chilling moments is in the scene where she says, Smoke, hey, if the vampires get me, you better kill me. And she's really fucking serious.
Yeah.
And that even though it's gonna kill him emotionally, he's going to have to keep that promise. And it's all the more devastating, I think, because she gives such an incredible performance, that he does have to make that choice late in the film.
Yeah. Yeah. Both Wunmi Masaku and Michael B. as Smoke have a real gravity and a graveness to them of, I guess, a plot point that I won't spoil, but it's like they've known something perhaps worse than what they're going to experience on this night, and therefore like have a certain clarity about like how they want to go about being free of it.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you... I'm trying to think where I should draw the spoiler line here. Probably now. There's a specific thing happening in this movie where the vampires play Irish music. And they play it very well. They play Irish folk music, Go Lassie Go and Rocky Road to Dublin, and a very creepy version of Pick the Robin Clean, which the three of them play in like perfect unison, like swinging their banjos all in the same direction as they're like trying to get in. And it's like the the perfect unison with what you're doing. This is not helping your case, guys.
I love the idea that as soon as Jack O'Connell bites you, you immediately become like a master musician.
For sure, they all do seem to share like one brain. They are like more of an organism that way.
Yeah, it's like a beehive.
Yes, yep, for sure. But there's this key moment, spoilers, late in the movie, where Jack O'Connell is like trying to force Preacher Boy to say the Lord's Prayer, and Remick is basically like, I'm paraphrasing here, but he's like, I don't like this prayer. The British man who stole my father's land forced us to say it. Which people taking up the black church in the U.S. and the Jim Crow South would know a little something about, like, having a religion forced on them and, like, trying to, adopt it and make it their own, but still it's origins of oppression. I guess I'm still trying to make sense of, like, the vampires do seem to occupy some sort of, like, in-between space or some kind of mirror image of what's happening at the juke joint, where it's like what you said in the very beginning that I assumed was true. I just thought the vampires would be the Klan. These would just be racist vampires, and they're not. They're actually sort of like, we don't want any part of the Klan. We're actually making a new Klan. and it's based, somebody's like, and it's based on love. But they're also playing folk music of oppressed people. What to make of that, dude?
Well, part of the reason I love that, and I think you described what's so kind of slippery about it. You spoke to that very eloquently. It's hard to get a handle on just what it means. I mean, they arouse a lot of conflicting feelings, and it just speaks to the idea that everyone ultimately, I think, has some experience of both being oppressed and being an oppressor, right? It's just, it depends on the context, it depends on the situation. And Jack O'Connell is obviously the lead villain, but then again, at some point, some other vampire probably bit him and made him a slave to these instincts that are beyond this control. And so I think the vampires are all kind of tragic in a way that they're all kind of trapped in this way of life. And I think especially when we get the epilogue with Stack and we're
Yeah, let's
seeing
do
him
it.
decades later, which is so haunting. And by that point, I was kind of feeling like, oh, the vampires, they're so grotesque and nasty, and they're taking such pleasure in the destruction they're wreaking, and then to have Stack come back and have this sense of melancholy and say, "Oh, that was the last day I saw my brother. That was the last day I saw the sun." And it's like, oh, the vampires, don't just magically become these demonic entities, even after they've been quote unquote turned. They still have regrets. They still have longings, and I love that the movie in a way like gave some humanity back to them.
Yeah. And humanity again mirrored in the people. Chicago blues legend Buddy Guy plays Sammy in what's it supposed to be, 1992.
Yeah.
Buddy Guy looks great. He's 88 years old. And I don't think he looks a day over 68 in the movie. But yeah, he's asked to deliver. I should say there's a cool story too, if people haven't heard it, of like Buddy Guy, very important figure to Ryan Coogler via his uncle. Ryan Coogler's uncle was a blues musician who like idolized Buddy Guy. So getting him in this movie was a big deal. But, with kind of painful looking 88-year-old eyes, Sammy looks up at the vampires and is like, am I crazy, or was like that one of the best days of my entire life before the vampires showed up?
Yeah,
and he's so good at that moment, and that it's sort of like the movie also saying it knows what you said earlier, Ben, about how the first act of this movie might be the best part, where it's just like, God, wasn't that a great goddamn day when we were getting the catfish and we had 100 bottles of beer? Wasn't that awesome?
Well, yeah, and I think to me, definitely as this movie went on more and more, it was starting to lose me a little bit. I was going like, does this work? I don't know. And the epilogue was absolutely what brought me back
It was key.
and made me go like, oh, this is a movie I would like to see again, because I would like to keep wrestling with the ideas and the emotions that it's wrestling with.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think again just goes to like, oh, this is going to be how I watch Coogler movies, is like, this is a movie where 50 vampires killed 50 people, but like most of what I'm thinking about is what this old blues guitarist said at the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not that Coogler doesn't care about why you're there. I don't think it's like a total Trojan horse situation. I don't want to accuse it of that.
Yeah.
This movie has a really interesting original take on what vampires are and what's attractive about them and how they speak your language and do alluring things. But yeah, it's funny, like what Coogler is interested in and what ultimately he makes me interested in is bringing these little moments that would be on the sidelines and giving them so much import. Can I give you the vampire questionnaire that I've been giving everyone in this series?
Oh, please. Yeah, bring it on.
And you can go quick.
Suck some answers out of me.
I won't have to do that. You're always so good at answering. And if we've already covered these, you can keep it moving quick. What is the most upsetting thing about these particular vampires, Ben?
I think that they're so happy.
Yes.
They don't have that like gloom that we expect vampires. They just have this very kind of perky, like, it's great being a vampire.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to be a vampire and give up your freedom? It's
Right.
like, there's something really, really sinister about how upbeat they are about, it's like, yeah, we're gonna suck your blood and condemn you to eternal hell and servitude. But who wouldn't want that?
I'm thinking of the scene where Mary goes over to get some gold from them because they're like, this juke joint's not making enough money, but those three white suckers over there looked like they might actually have some money that we could use, and they're just sort of like, you seem sad, like you need some saving. And I think that's I guess this movie offers so many paths to some saving, and all of them are dangerous.
Yeah.
You can go back to Dad's church and not become who you were going to be. You can go become a music legend and be kind of lonely and haunted about what you've been through. You can be part of this new cult. You can try to do the power and money of the old cult and maybe be killed by the Klan. But there's it's a movie of imperfect avenues to a kind of personal salvation.
Yes.
Are these vampires metaphors or just killers, Ben?
I think these are metaphors for sure, but they're not metaphors in the way that vampires are usually metaphors. Like, I think vampires usually have this kind of BDSM quality of like the ultimate dominators,
Right.
you know?
Yes.
Like you're attracted to like sort of the grotesque masculinity of them.
Yeah.
And these vampires, it's a different kind of seduction. It is that cult-like
Yeah.
energy and that promise of a kind of really sort of twisted concept of freedom.
Really good. In terms of vampire lore references, Ben, too many, too few, or the right amount in Sinners?
I think the right amount, but I have to say the best one is when they're all going around eating the garlic, and one of the characters is like, I don't want to just chew on like raw garlic. Come on. Like that was like just a very like honest human reaction that everyone's like, no, you must eat this garlic to It's like I love the idea that it's not just that it's a life or death situation, it's that it's a really bad situation for any, normal person who doesn't like garlic.
It's true. Yeah, that's Pauline. That's Jamie Lawson, who's like, I'm not eating garlic. Yeah, this movie does have kind of funny tone shifts as it becomes like an explicit vampire movie, including like we started the series with From Dusk Till Dawn, but it like really kind of has that moment of it's Annie who's just like, I thought these guys were weird, but I actually think they might be vampires. just like having to say it very explicitly, and she's like, all right, so anyway, vampires. We have garlic, do we have holy water, do we have any? There's even like kind of a funny moment that I think is a little clunky in the script where they're like, anyone know if these vampires play by Lost Boys rules where if you kill the main one, the other ones die? Does anybody know that? And they're like, no, we don't know that yet. I was like, okay, all right. So those were the ones where I was like, oh, it's just like there might be a little bit too much obligation with some of these tropes that it's just like, yeah.
Well, it's like, do these characters, are they well versed in vampire lore, or did they like grow up
Apparently.
with scary campfire stories?
Because Annie runs an apothecary. She's the foremost local expert on all things supernatural. Yeah, that one just
So,
made
so
me.
if vampires come, I should go talk to a pharmacist, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And they'll ask you if you've had your vampire vaccine. And you'll say the CDC says I don't have to have that anymore. What's the best way to kill vampires according to this movie, Ben?
Get them outside and just wait for the sun to come up, Chance.
That's
And pray that the vampires don't notice how close to dawn
Yeah.
it is.
Go to the middle of a very cinematic lake and bide your time.
Just keep them busy. Keep them busy till the sun comes up.
Yeah, see if they'll tell you a story about how they learned the Lord's Prayer.
This is the second time in a couple months, because it's kind of like Nosferatu,
Sure.
that we've seen a
Keep
movie
them
where it's
busy,
like,
wink, wink.
yeah, just keep them distracted, and if they're really involved in what they're doing, they're not even going to be thinking about sunrise.
Speaking of, I did take that to be the main example you were talking about of like the BDSM appeal of like, yeah, emo ghost who possesses your heart and
Yes.
holds you down from countries away.
Oh God.
On a scale of Orlok to Cullen, how hot are these vampires?
These vampires are pretty hot, but I did notice that a lot of them were like seriously mutilated. Like
Yes.
some of them even on their faces, and God, like Haley Steinfeld has that really kind of like grotesque like chunk that's been taken out of her back. Like I don't know, some of the wounds are pretty nasty. So it's not full like Pattinson, Stewart, Ashley Green sexy vampireness.
Right. Yeah. And I did appreciate kind of the funny moments of the vampires being like, I'm so close to having this completely made that I'm going to start drooling all over myself. Including the fantastic Michael B. line, "Baby, you're drooling." Okay, a couple more questions for you, Ben, before I get you out of here. When you were sitting in your seat for the first time to watch Sinners, how many references to oral sex were you expecting? Was it a half dozen? Because this is kind of a horny movie.
Well, Chance, I was not expecting any, but I was pleasantly surprised by the amount that script included.
Yeah, this is like, I mean, so many of the movies in this series and vampire movies in general are like, yeah, vampires are hot, they're attractive, but like this one, people are just like,
people are horny even before the vampires show up.
they really are. And you know what? Maybe that is totally of a piece with like what they are doing. We are about to open the hottest joint in town, and like this kid is going to play steel guitar and invite in all the ancestors, and everyone's getting lucky tonight.
Yeah. I like the exchange too of like, oh, when your wife sees how much money you're going to be making, she's really going to want to.
Yeah.
And then like his wife is like, go on. You know, what's said and what's unsaid in that scene, I think is really kind of beguiling.
For sure. I was only half joking. This movie does have a specific fixation with oral sex and being sort of transformative. You teach it, people come back to you because they can't stop thinking about how good you were at it. It's just a funny wrinkle to this movie that has a beautiful all over the placeness where it's just like, also aren't there 12 really horny moments in that movie?
Well, when one of the brothers is like overhearing Preacher Boy like on the other side of the door, and
I
it's
taught
like,
him that.
oh, I know what's going on, you know.
Oh my God. I think this is sort of a inelegant way to wrap up the discussion, Ben, but I just think part of what makes this movie so great is there are lots of little legible moments and nuggets in it that I was fascinated by. And I'll throw a few out, and you can unpack any one you want, or you can bring in your own. I mean, I really am interested in the idea of these two brothers fighting over whether they should, like, accept a currency that all of their patrons are taking instead of money, instead of real opportunity, because of, like, how that kind of parallels sharecropping in general. You have this whole lie about them giving Sammy Charlie Patton's guitar. We talked about the Remick talking about his Irish father and the British. We talked about the Choctaw being like, hey guys, you didn't invite like a lone white guy into your lonely apartment, did you? Because like that wouldn't be a good idea. And then you've got the whole thing of like the guy cheating at cards, and Perline is like doing her song in the Battle of the Blues, and everyone's stomping at the same time as everyone's kicking the shit out of the dude who cheated. Any of those moments of particular interest to you, or please toss out more?
Well, I love the moment you were talking about with the Choctaw characters coming to the door, and I love how that's set up right before that with Jack O'Connell almost like uh, seeming to fall out of the sky in a way as he appears like on this dusty plain like out of nowhere in front of this house. And I love movies where the villain seems to almost emerge from thin air in a way. Like it kind of reminded me of the Joker and the Dark Knight. Just all of a sudden he's there on that street corner, and it's if he's been just sort of called out of the ether to menace these characters. And I thought that introducing Remick in a similar way was really, really frightening. It's like almost like he never existed before the movie began, and he will never exist after it's over.
It's so true, but it also seems like when you say called out of the ether, it's like called out of the ether specifically to take advantage of the pre-existing anxieties and hatreds of this place,
Yeah.
1930s Mississippi. You know what other thing I really want to talk about before we get out of here is the way that the cotton fields are shot.
Mm.
Because you have these two long car rides, right? Of Sammy and Stack going to, is it going to Little Rock? They're going to the train station to go. They're going to town basically to get Delta Slim, Delroy Lindo's character, and then they all drive all the way back. And behind them, over their shoulders, is just like oceans and oceans of cotton field. And Coogler, to his credit, never does an overhead shot. He's never like, look at all this. It's just the most like striking, eerie thing you've seen, but it's just behind them as they have conversations the whole time, which I thought was such an inspired way of being like this 8,000-pound symbol for oppression and fake opportunity and history is just like right over their shoulder as they like form relationships and try to have this night go off. Because like, and I could even imagine someone like Denis Villeneuve, for instance, who I think we both like, would definitely like. We've seen Sicario, we've seen the amazing shot of so like the palace on Arrakis. Like he loves to be like, look where we are, look at all this shit. But it's amazing that Coogler stays with the characters because he's like, that wouldn't seem special to them. It's just in the background the whole time. And I think that's kind of what's cool about what breaks open in that kind of phantasmagoric music scene is like they're just there like doing their thing. It is like all these other viewpoints of history and culture and trauma that are just in the background of all this. And sometimes the guitar solo is so good that it comes into the foreground. But I just fucking loved the way that the cotton fields were shot. I can't think of another movie that would portray something so glaring but not draw a lot of attention to it.
Yeah, and I think that you're getting at something that's really impactful about the movie, which is that there are a lot of these moments where you can go, oh, that's impeccably well crafted, but it never feels like a kind of flourishing technique. Like you think about Li Lee's daughter, walking across the street to, summon her, and it's just like one take, following, the daughter across the street, following the mother crossing the street again, which out of context you might go, oh, Ryan Coogler wants to try to do a really long shot because that's a hip thing. But then, of course, it's the relationship between mother and daughter that kind of comes into play at maybe the most pivotal moment in the film. So it's like, oh, I get it. That shot was actually establishing something that was narratively meaningful. And like you were saying about the cotton fields, like he wasn't gonna overemphasize it. He was almost going to underemphasize it, but our attention to it is drawn to that all the more because it's underemphasized.
Any other little moments you want to shout out? It's okay if not. I just anything else in your diary you want to get out before we do truth or trivia?
Well, yeah, actually, I want to ask you a question, Chance.
No. What?
Putting you in the hot seat.
Okay, I'm ready.
No. So the music through the ages scene, the kind of lonely epilogue, Li Lee having a supporting role. Did this remind you, by any chance, of another movie that you and I both like a lot?
Babylon?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The idea that both movies and music are eternal?
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah. Right, it is. They are definitely have commonalities because they're just like, look at this beautiful art form of expression. Look at the horrible people that it attracts when you turn it into an industry.
Yes, yeah.
Look at what a dirty business it all is, beloved by some, justifiably hated by others, but like I'm just gonna keep going because it's what I love and it does bring joy, perhaps more often than not.
Yeah. And there's that sense of like commitment to it at the end. I mean, Preacher Boy in the last scene, we don't know what his life has been, but there is a sense that he's isolated. He's alone at the end of the night, and these two vampires now in rather garish 90s garb are
Yes.
coming to say a rather scary hello, but he did what he loved. He fulfilled his dreams, and there is a kind of solace in that.
Yeah. Well, I like too what you said earlier about commitment because I think I risk making it sound too lame of like Preacher Boy needed to follow his passions, but it's almost like what you've already given. The die has been cast. Like after that night, like he'd given so much to music that like you can't stop now. Like he's just on down that road in the same way that like, by the time Manny sits down in that theater at the end of Babylon, it's just like the best, most influential years of his life were given to this thing. So like, it's a done deal. He's a movie guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is how
absolutely.
I feel at the end of every podcast episode.
Likewise, I think that there's again the element of religion too, because obviously, religion is, as you said, a huge part of Sinners, but it's not just about like actually going to church. It's about that kind of religious devotion to music. Just as Manny in the theater watching Singing in the Rain and Babylon, it's like he's gone to his cathedral of choice to pray to his God, and that God is cinema. And in Sinners, the God of choice is music, and we kind of get all wrapped up in that worship.
Yeah, it's true. Truth or trivia, Ben? What are you into today?
Truth, and then I'll answer the trivia question that you asked me after that.
I do typically force people into both. I think I know the answer to this one. I just wanted to see if you would surprise me. Best example of movie twins played by the same actor?
Oh God! Wow.
Your favorite. Take your time.
Can you list some famous ones for me?
Can you guess the one that I thought you were gonna pick?
What?
From a Nolan movie.
Oh, Christian Bale.
Yep. Um,
You know that might be my favorite. That is pretty deft. Yeah, and The
Sure.
Prestige. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought
Oh,
about Jeremy Irons in Dead Ringers.
oh yeah, that was great. Yeah.
But it was funny when I was looking at some list of like, I want to make sure I have some in my head of like, what are my options here for twins, and like how many of them were a spoiler, where it was like, I don't know if I want to. It was just like Blake Lively in A Simple Favor, and I was like, what? And it was like, oh, is that the twist of that movie? Is it was twins?
I had actually forgotten that there were two Blake Lively's.
I'll give you Armie Hammer as the Winklevi. I'll give you Lindsay Lohan in Parent Trap. I'll give you Nick.
Lindsay Lohan. Conversation over.
There you go. I'll give you Nick Cage in Adaptation.
Yeah, that's true. That's very good.
Jean-Claude Van Damme in Double Impact. Another one.
No,
Go ahead.
love for Lohan aside, I think I will have to go with Bale. Although I will say that the one twin who doesn't love Rebecca Hall is a real dick.
Yes.
And I was not that sorry when he was the twin who got executed. It's like, dude, you were married to Rebecca Hall
blew it.
and you fucked it up. Like, all you had to do was be faithful to Rebecca Hall. Come on, bro.
I fear this one, the trivia question is far too easy, but it was just something that I had forgotten, so I thought it was funny. Do you know what Killmonger's first name is?
It's Eric with a K,
Yeah.
which is the same spelling as Eric Lencher, Magneto, who I think has a very similar philosophy. So I always remembered that because of that.
Excellent. I just thought that was funny because I always think of Killmonger as kind of a melodramatic mononym. And then they're
Yes.
like, no, his name's Eric. And I was like, that's like saying his name's John Joker. Like,
Well, do you remember his actual last name, Chance?
no.
Stevens. Eric Stevens.
Oh, okay. That's Sterling K. Brown's last name in the beginning?
I guess so.
Okay.
Yeah, I remembered there was an interview. I think it was Elvis Mitchell and Michael B. Jordan, where Elvis Mitchell was making a point of referring to the character as Eric Stevens, and I always kind of liked that. It's like, yeah, he's not Killmonger. He's Eric. Killmonger is an idea. Eric is the heart of the character.
Well done. Well done. I have a newfound reverence. Ben, thanks for doing this, man. It was fun.
Oh, thank you, Chance.